I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Planning and Housing Commission. Commissioner Vernon will lead us in tonight's pledge. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Individuals wishing to address the Planning and Housing Commission are requested to complete a speaker card and deliver it to the secretary prior to the item being heard. Please observe a 3-minute time limit for communications, and once being called upon, please state your name and city of residence. Meeting minutes. Ms. Capilla, are there any speakers cards from the public for meeting minutes?
No, Chair Longwell.
For approval of the minutes for Planning and Housing Commission meeting for February 24th. Do we have a motion?
I motion the minutes be approved.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Say that again. Okay. Okay, so when we get to the item, you can absolutely fill out a speaker card. Do you have a speaker? Do you want to talk about do you want to speak on the meeting minutes from last week's meeting? Okay. For tonight? Okay, so the speaker cards are in the back? Or with you?
Yes, there are speaker cards and pencils in the back if you'd like to fill one out for the public hearing item, which will be coming up.
Absolutely. And then you can just take those cards to Mrs. Capilla. So a motion was made by Commissioner Alexander and seconded by Commissioner Vernon. Please vote.
Commissioner Vernon, can you place your vote? Put in your vote.
Perfect. Motion is passed. Communications from the public. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment on items within the commission's jurisdiction that are not listed elsewhere on the agenda. Please note that the state law prohibits the Planning and Housing Commission from discussing or taking action on the items, and please observe a 3-minute time limit for your comments. Ms. Capilla, are there any speakers cards from the public?
Not for
Not yet.
communications at
So
this time.
I know we have some people filling out speakers cards. Is anyone filling out a card for something that's not on the agenda? I'm going to say that's no. And we'll move to public hearing. So the first item on the public hearing is CUP 2023-0015, a conditional use permit for the establishment of a religious facility, a mosque, within an existing 4,330 square foot residential dwelling on a 1.37 acre property located at 2460 South Main. Applicant is Ali Raza Rizvi, representing the Sajadi Islamic Society. Brendan Daldy, Assistant Planner, will now present this item.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair Longwell and members of the Planning Commission. I'm pleased to present the item before you tonight for the conditional use permit, record number CUP 2023-0015. Project site's located at 2460 South Main Street. So tonight's request, we have a conditional use permit for the conversion of an existing 4,330 square foot residential dwelling to be converted into a religious facility or a mosque. Just a brief background for the Planning Commission. and also a locational map located on the right side. So again, it's located at 2460 South Main Street. It's located just west of South Main Street and south of Montoya Drive and Nanners Way. Subject property is approximately 1.37 acres. It's currently, again, developed and is a 4,330 square foot dwelling that's vacant, also owned by the Islamic Society. The proposed mosque will replace the current mosque location that's located at the North Corona Mall. The reason for the relocation is the city recently acquired that property, and so once their lease is done, they're going to be looking for a new location, and they feel that this is their best fit. Next, development standards and allowable uses. So religious facilities are allowed in all residential zones with the approval of a conditional use permit. The parking was based on a 1 space per 25 square feet of assembly area. In this case, it'll be located based off of the prayer hall. Setbacks will be consistent with the residential zone at R1 8.4. And there's currently no change to the existing building footprint. So the building footprint that's out there right now, it'll remain the same, and there won't be any structural changes to that. Provided below are also the setback requirements for that zone and also for that site. It's important to note that this site's adjacent to 2 public right-of-ways, and so per the Corona Municipal Code, the portion in which it fronts, the narrowest portion would be the front, so that front setback is actually off of Nanners Way. That's why their rear setback would be located off South Main Street. Wanted to talk a little bit about the daily operations and their day-to-day activities. So 365 days of year, they'll have prayer 5 times a day. Each prayer is about 3 to 5 minutes, and it ranges from sunrise to sunset is their typical time frame. So the times that are presented before you right now on the screen up top was prior to the daylight savings time that we just experienced. So currently, it's about an hour up front, but it does vary throughout the year in that hour time frame, and they're pretty precise based off of their afternoon, morning, sunset, sunrise, etc. Saturday through Thursday, they have an anticipated attendees of about 0 to 10 people during those prayer times. Their busy times are on Fridays and Sundays, and that anticipation is about 50 to 75 individuals throughout those 2 time frames. Next, we have the site plan. So wanted to talk a little bit on the site plan. We've got a lot going on, so I'll try to walk you through it. Overall, on the site, about 19,000 square feet of landscaping will be provided. On the northerly portion there, you'll see the proposed bioretention basin. It's on the northeast corner of the project site. That's that area. If you took a site visit, it's on the lower side of the grade, and it just kind of naturally drains to the north side, so that's the best fit for that basin. In addition to that, it has 68 spaces, and that's based off of the 1,675 square feet prayer hall area for both the men and women. Located on the easterly corner as well is the front entrance, and then on the southerly corner is the exit. So it'll be right in, right out off of South Main Street. Daily they'll be traveling southbound off South Main Street onto the site, and then they'll be leaving southbound on South Main Street as well. Located on the northwestern corner is an emergency access call out. That access is just what it's called out for, is emergency purposes only. Ideally, that site or that driveway will never be utilized, but in the event that it does, it has a Knox box there for fire purposes as well. Next, we have our floor plan. Again, going to be consisting of 2 prayer halls totaling 1,675 square feet, 2 reading rooms, approximately 495 square feet, and then 3 restrooms as well, and other various rooms associated with the religious facility. There are other reading rooms and other areas there in conjunction with the mosque known as their knowledge center. That's more to just further their or expand their knowledge in the field. Here we have located as our wall and fence plan. So you'll see 2 colors there and also images on the right. In red will be a 6-foot high wrought iron fence that's being proposed about 258 linear feet across that frontage on South Main Street. In addition to that, you'll see two purple outlines. Those will be the gates that are 6 feet high. Those are sliding gates. They're not going to be swinging, so they'll be sliding in and out, north and south on the exit, and then east and west on the entrance up there. The one on the back off Nanners Way, located on the northwestern corner, is going to be untouched. That one's going to remain the same. But yeah, this is the wall and fence plan being proposed currently. Next, we have our elevations. In terms of any structural changes, again, no exterior alterations that would impact the original footprint of the dwelling. It's going to remain the same single-family residential look that it's had since it was built back in 1957. This, located on the top, will be the east elevation. This will be the portion that's fronting Main Street. They took off those gates that you'll see out there right now, just to give it a more friendly appearance. But in terms of construction material, it'll still remain the same with concrete tiles, stucco, plaster finish, and then they'll also be revamping just whatever's needed out there, including their wood siding. But in terms of the single-family residential look and facade, it'll remain the same. And with that, we have staff's recommendation. Excuse me. Staff recommends that the Planning and Housing Commission find the project categorically exempt and adopt a resolution number 2661 granting CUP 2023-0015 approved based on the findings contained in the staff report and conditions of approval. Myself and the rest of the staff are available for any questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Do any commissioners have questions for staff?
Hi, thanks for the report, Mr. Daldy. I get the one thing that the one concern I have kind of about the site plan is the traffic flow, and I'm just wondering, what sort of discussions there were about, leading up to the plan that was submitted.
Sure, Chair Woody, or Commissioner Woody, my apologies. I can say I kind of picked this project up as it was running, but I will say that this is an existing site, and so I think that's one of the reasons why the Islamic Society kind of appealed to this, is there's already 3 curb cuts, there's already 3 driveways in place, so they were kind of limited in terms of circulation, internal circulation, getting a parking lot to meet this intense parking standard in play. What they had come to the conclusion is that this was the best way to go about it with the one-way aisle. You can see on the easterly corner fronting South Main Street, it's actually a 45-degree parking angle, which would allow them to have that 18-foot one-way drive aisle. If they were to do anything beyond that, they wouldn't be able to meet a two-way drive aisle width. So there was significant challenges with the internal circulation of the site, given just where the home's located and what the mosque's parking requirements are. So that was kind of those additional discussions we had and how they ultimately came to this design.
Okay, so then for a two-way drive aisle, it looks like there's some up there that are 25 feet. Is that the standard?
Yeah, that's correct. It would be more of that 25, 26 foot based off of what fire's requirements were. That's why they also needed that emergency access off Nanners Way.
Mm-hmm. I guess the main concern I have, so all the traffic is to enter on the north driveway on Main Street, and then all the traffic is to exit on the south driveway. That's the way the plan, as I see it, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so then, I mean, is it possible to have wider driveways? I'm just thinking that having everybody enter and then have to make a sharp left turn, immediately upon entering will be a pretty slow effort. At the peak times when we're getting potentially, 60 or more cars. And then for the people who are coming in, they'll have to park all the way in the back, so they'll have to drive all the way around. I was also wondering, there is it looks like a driveway on the north side of there that's 24 and 4 inches, it looks like. I mean, could that not be also a way for people to get to the back, the west side parking area of that, of the lot? I just see a little problematic of the, diverting everybody to the left and then, having to drive all the way around to get there. And then, of course, the exit, it would be nice if there could be, the southbound, the south driveway could also be a two-way, so more people could enter there as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Woody. In terms of the driveway ingress and egress, Development Services had reviewed this as one. It does meet their driveway egress standard. Staff didn't feel at the time that any expansion of the driveway would be needed. The bigger conversation was the gates and the queuing behind that gate. We also worked with the applicant to ensure that that gate was going to be remaining open during those prayer times so it wouldn't back up onto Main Street. And then just overall internal circulation, the applicant had felt it was best to just do a internal circulation rotating down to the south side of the lot.
So the gate's only at the exit driveway? There's not a gate on the entrance?
Sure. Could we go back to the wall and fence plan if we can? So highlighted in purple are the two gates. One will be located on the north side there, highlighted in purple, and then one will be on the south. Those will be the two gates. The one on the north will be kind of where that ingress is going to be located as they turn right off of South Main Street. Then the one located on the south will be their exit.
Okay, I have no further questions at this time.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Woody. I too have the same concerns. I see the driveway straight ahead as being a second option. What that will do is flush the queue. The problem is there's only 3 vehicles queuing, so you're almost guaranteed to back up onto Main Street. The center median, the raised center median, is the reason why it's right in, right out, which makes sense. So with that said, is you're directing into a bottleneck all cars coming southbound Main into the property. So immediately you're bringing together a conflict, correct? Because you're having to turn left immediately within a short distance, what is that, 25 feet? So by forcing them to go left and not go straight forward, straight back, and I went out to the property and I see the retaining wall that separates the drive from this basin area. And I understand there's a proximity that you have to stay away from it. But in my mind, having dual access to draw it away from Main should be the priority. And having turn left, and thank you for the explanation regarding the distance, the requirement for the width of the lane. You said dual lane, but that whole entrance right up until you get to the right-hand turn for the parking going west, that's a single lane the way you have it drawn. So my concern is twofold. One, it's the entrance. I think it's creating a clog. It's going to back up onto Main Street. You've got, let's say you have a full attendance, 68 vehicles, and they're all coming 15 to 30 minutes for the service. So, and they're only able to come in one way, and that's southbound Main onto this property, and immediately having to turn left. If you look at all the other properties on the west side of Main Street, which I did, all of those businesses, which has a lot bigger capacity for cars and visitors or residents or whatnot from Citron down to Ontario. They all have at least two methods of entry off of Main Street as you're going southbound. So all of them you go left all the way to the end, or you can go straight. So that is going to eliminate backlogging onto Main Street. The traffic flowing on Main Street is at a high rate of speed because they haven't quite come up to the stop where it intersects with Magnolia. So my question would be, after all that long-windedness, is if you were to allow the circulation to go straight back, that would alleviate, I see that it's highlighted no parking near the water basin, but if you were to remove the L part of the cinder block existing wall and have traffic go back, that would create the flow drawing away from Main Street. And I think that would be a good consideration. The vehicles on the slant, the same distance that you have there, you can put 23 parking spaces, at least I counted at the top, across the front, because I don't think there's enough parking. I know that the calculation was done based on the square footage of the assembly room, and I don't know the code, but in my eyes, both reading rooms are also assembly, because in the applicant's letter and also in your staff report, it talks about the same type of function for not only the reading rooms for enrichment and learning. That happens in the reading rooms, and it also happens enrichment in the prayer rooms. So with that said, you would need 86 technically parking lot. So you're short there. As far as on the angle, I know when the city put in the angled parking on 6th Street, there was a promotion to get residents to learn about. You're going to have to pause in your lane while they come out or back in or whatever the situation is. And so that immediately came to mind when you've got only 3 vehicles in the queue. So there's no way to flush the queue because there's only one lane, one way in. And I would feel better with, it's almost like you're asking for a variance if you think about it, because all the other businesses have 2 ways to draw the traffic in and have an option versus immediately turning left. So thank you, Commissioner Woody. I also had the same questions on that.
Could I ask a question that maybe clarifies something you just said? The reading rooms then, because I was thinking about those too, but yeah, I mean, is there a reason why the reading rooms are not counted? I mean, I guess in my mind, those would be similar to other.
Well, if you look at the
Like
site
a
map,
room where a Sunday school class might meet in a church, right? Is that enrichment sort of?
well, all of those rooms also have occupancy loads. So in a way, that's consistent with the prayer rooms.
Yeah.
So in my mind, unless there's a specific part of the code, they're assembly also. It was too small, I couldn't read what the,
Well, that's what I was asking. Maybe staff can clarify why those would not be included
in the formula.
Yeah.
Sure, Chair, or Commissioner Woody. In terms of what we've historically done for the mosque, we've done the parking ratio based off of that prayer hall area, and the assembly area is what would fall underneath that prayer hall area. I don't think we've ever had, I can't tell you off the bat what Santana Way had done with their mosque in terms of what their parking ratio was and whether or not they had other miscellaneous rooms that could have been determined as an assembly area. But the communication that we've had was always use the assembly area parking as what the prayer hall area would include.
Well, I'm not necessarily concerned with what the other mosque was, but what's the standard for all the churches in town? Because that would be the standard.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt here.
Answer.
So here's what happens. When you're dealing with religious institutions, not everything is happening at the same time. So not just with the mosque, but with all of our other religious facilities, we only park it at the congregation area for prayer because all the other activities are occurring outside of prayer hours. So you don't need to duplicate the parking, you actually share it. So for example, what Commissioner Woody said, you're right. When you have Sunday school, prayer service is over. So you have people that are there that are now doing Sunday teachings, and you don't need to provide for that parking because it's already calculated in. And that is the same situation here. So when the applicant gets up to speak tonight, I think they could talk about how their operation works, but the learnings are separate from the prayer times. And then I think the prayer is also very limited in itself. So they can also talk about how long someone is there doing prayer. It's my understanding it could be 5 minutes, so then they're on their way. So these uses are not all going to collide at the same time within the building. So we have always parked it based on the assembly for the prayer area.
Thank
And
you.
that's in all churches.
Thank you for that.
So I think that answers the parking ratio question, but not the can you adjust to go straight when you enter off of Main Street?
So I'd like to add some information regarding that, regarding the driveways. So all the drive aisle widths meet the city standard. They've been reviewed by all the applicable departments, including the fire department, and it has been approved. They've looked at the on-site circulation, and they have no issues. In terms of allowing vehicles to punch straight up, there is a great difference between where that garage is at the end of that drive aisle to the parking lot drive aisle on the other side. There's about a 4-foot grade difference. And that's why it wasn't designed to allow for vehicles to punch through. And we can have the applicant come here and explain a little bit more about that grade difference and what they've looked at.
But as far as, I understand the grade difference, but it's not impossible.
We can have, I don't know if their engineers here today, but they could speak to what designs they've looked at.
And if I heard you correctly, your biggest concern is the stacking that's going to happen on Main Street based on the 3 cars that are going to be queuing before that gate and that congestion that happens as you turn left.
Well, it's just not the congestion, it's the large, and this is at the peak time.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't obviously during 90% of the prayer times that were listed. But the way that it's designed is you have the immediate left-hand turn. You have the timing of perhaps the first cars that are coming in or coming out. If someone's leaving and they're only there 5 minutes, they're in one of those parking spaces. They're backing out while the rest of them are coming in. That's going to back up. The entrance is right there, so it's a very complex. The entrance isn't on the other side, for example. Some churches are on the back side where the majority of the parking is, including Seventh-day Adventists next door. So you have a lot going on. You have people getting out of their cars. The handicap parking, you've got the walking going across there, which could slow traffic. So there's multiple factions going on that are going to contribute to the 3 queues maxing out really quick. The rest of the circulation looks great. I like the idea of right out only. You have a center medium, and then you've got the intersection coming up right after that. Anyway, as you continue south, it's just the flow should have an option when you're backing up. So if you have folks, for example, the applicant said in their letter that they would have attendees out in the parking lot to direct. There's nowhere to direct. I mean, if it's clogged, it's clogged. You have to wait for pedestrians. You have to wait for parking. You have to wait for, there's multiple factors there that I have concerns with. And yeah, and being that close to Main, and it is a major arterial that was described in the staff report. So that would be my question. I do have some other questions, Chair, if I could go on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. When in the staff report on page 2 where it talks about the building, it's only one building, right? At one point it talks about a plural, and then the fire department section under the conditions of approval, they also talk about buildings or
Commiss-
specific address for each building. Right?
Commissioner
There's just
Alexander-
one footprint?
Yes, there is just one building footprint.
Okay, great. And I had a question regarding the bioretention basin. It talked about condition of approval about having to remove the well. Multiple places it talked about drainage and the soil stability. Is that all just standard coding from Public Works, or is there something about the well being there, having to be removed, and the retention basin is where it's at because of the soil, or is it just standard wording?
The applicant said they would remove the well, so it's just standard wording to ensure they remove it properly.
Is the well located where the basin is outlined?
I believe it's over in that area.
I was just wondering if it was unique to the lot or it was just standard verbiage. And I just thought that, is the well going to, is the the retention basin going there because of the slope and the difference of elevations? It's just a natural place to put it, or?
Yeah, that's the natural place to put the basin, and the applicant's going to abandon the well, so we just want to make sure they follow the right procedures when they do that.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the ramps versus stairs, is that ADA compliance, or is that just, you don't have to have a ramp plus stairs, it's just convenience, correct? For the front and the back of the building?
Sure. If I were to take a stab at it, I think typically, yes, you would need to have that ADA compliance ramp. So you'll typically see stairs and you'll see a ramp. Perhaps the applicant can provide a little bit more information on that, but
Okay.
I do think that the ramp is just the overall satisfactory version for all parties.
And when it's referred to on the site map, the occupancy load, is that a fire marshal code, building code, or where's that term? It's just the maximum occupancy, correct?
Yeah, a little bit of both, but typically building and safety.
I see. I had a question regarding the applicant anticipating the larger attendance, but I'll address the applicant. And I just want to say that this commission, it's just not this application. In the past, when we have a project that's coming forward and it's so close to a major arterial, we, have extra scrutiny because, for example, we did Raising Cane on East Ontario. We made them put in a dual drive-through because of one, the site is known to attract a lot of customers, and two, we didn't want to have that backlog onto Ontario because they're so popular, being there also with Del Taco and also. So we did it for Raising Cane, the learning experience, the childcare facility off Ontario. We wanted to make sure that Vesper Circle wasn't overloaded, backlogging, entrances coming in, queuing in, making that left-hand turn. Just another example was Pivot School went in on North Main Street. It was also close to Main Street, so we were scrutinizing the ingress, egress, and that type of circulation. So we're not picking on you. It's just something that we do. And we also did the Starbucks on Green River. We want to make sure that what the activity happening on the site, whether it's a mosque, whether it's a school, whatever the case is that it's self-sufficient and that it stays on the site and it doesn't overflow in a negative way to the neighborhood. So I just wanted to make that point. So regarding the front there, the only way to make those parking spaces is to put them on the slant, and that's because it's a two-way, even though there's one-way arrows in your diagram.
Yes, they had to get a 45-degree parking angle on those parking spaces adjacent to Main Street because they weren't going to be able to fit that amount of parking spaces elsewhere, so they had to have that angled parking.
Thank you.
if I can jump in, is 45-degree angle parking the only acceptable angle for parking?
No, we have numerous different angles that would allow for different aisle widths. I don't know off the top of my head what those other widths were, but on this one in specific, the 45-degree angle would allow for an 18 one aisleway width. 18 feet, to clarify.
I had one more question. In the staff report, or maybe it was the conditions of approval, it talked about on the west end, which that would be that far wall from your plan that's up on the screen right now. It talked about having, I think it said half diamond planters every 6th parking space. Is that shown in the diagram, and will that take away parking spaces, or how does that work?
Yes, Commissioner Alexander, it won't necessarily take away any parking spaces. They'll be able to have those diamonds every 6 spaces. That's just a general practice that we have for parking lots. Again, this one's a little bit unique in terms that it's a residential use, but we don't typically see parking lots of this sizes on residentially zoned parcels. But in this particular case, it's a typical standard that you'd see with industrial and commercial uses, but it shouldn't affect the number of parking spaces back there on the westerly property line.
I only say it because I see the diamonds in the front on the east side, but I don't see it in the site plan on the back row.
Correct, yeah. We had conditioned them to implement that on the westerly angle. Those diamonds that are located on the angled parking are a lot larger than the ones that they'll have on the westerly angle. The ones on the westerly property line will have just enough planting area for those shade trees, and it'll act as an additional buffer in between the residences and the religious facility.
I guess my point is that they're not on the diagram, so would the planting occur in that setback 5 feet as illustrated and annotated here? Or, I guess my concern is I don't want it to take away 4 more parking spaces.
It won't take away their parking spaces. We'll review it through the plan check process. The way it's designed is it looks like this and it straddles over 2 parking spaces.
Oh, I
It's-
see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, at the very top of the parking space too. So your tire comes in and it'll hit the angle of that planter.
Okay, great,
Will act almost like a wheel stop, so.
okay. That's all I have for staff.
That was a really good lead into my question, which is sound buffering between that parking and the residential behind it. The residents behind it, I presume, bought that assuming that it's residential that's going to abut them, and now it's going to be parking that's directly behind them. So can you articulate how sound, light, any type of that is going to be filtered or mitigated from those residents?
There is an existing block wall along that west perimeter adjacent to those residents. In addition, there is that 5-foot wide landscape planter along with the diamond planters that would provide that separation, that additional buffer. The applicant is conditioned to install shade trees and landscaping, which will help to attenuate any parking lot noise. Any parking lot lighting will be required to have fixtures to hoods over the light fixtures that will require the lighting to be directed downward so that there's no glare. And so we'll look at all this through the plan check process.
Thank you.
And I had a question regarding sound. In the staff report, it talked about all the activities occur inside the prayer, the reading, the assembly rooms inside. But the applicant's letter also talked about special events where larger crowds are anticipated. And if there is an overflow of folks that spills over into the back patio, let's say, it looks like that's a back patio back there. I didn't see it in the conditions of approval of no audio, no speakers outside, which would project towards the homes in the area. Or how does that work with some mosques have call to prayer and it's audible? How does that work?
Yes, Commissioner Alexander. I did actually ask that the applicant of whether or not they're going to be proposing any speakers. They're not going to be having any speakers. Majority of the religious facility and religious gatherings will be within the religious facility itself. In the event in which they do have larger events or events that start, intensifying or expanding outside, if it's on a regular basis, not only will they have to come back and get a CUP modification for their intensifications, but if it's on a temporary basis, they'll be subject to a special use permit approval, which would go before the Board of Zoning Adjustment. And that Board of Zoning Adjustment at the time will have those same concerns of noise and lighting and what time. It's important to note this is still a residentially zoned parcel, so it'll need to abide by all the noise ordinances and other items left in play. They don't have any special exemptions in terms of being beyond, what the residential noise allowances are. And so, again, if there's any intense events going on, it'll go through a subject additional permit.
My other question in your write-up talked about if there were changes to the building and the site plan, it would come before for modifications. For evaluation by staff. If that comes forward, does that additional square footage, I know there's no plans now, but it was also mentioned it's a growing community, so fast forward 5-10 years from now, would that, how does that work with the adjustment with the parking ratio?
As soon as they come back in for any revisions and they start intensifying their prayer hall area, the same general checklist or practices will still apply. Once we get the proposal in, it's at the planning development director's discretion whether or not it's going to be an item that can be within, her approval, or if it's going to have to go back to the planning commission for an ultimate decision. If it's something fairly minor, it'll still go through those same channels and practices, and we'll ensure that it's still parking compliant. And if they're intensifying, a large amount that potentially could trigger, a traffic study or something of that nature, it's most likely that if it ever gets to that point, it's going to be before you guys as well. That's just the general, fork in the road for these CUP mods.
Thank you. Ms. Coletta, if it does come back to you and the square footage is expanded, what do you do when there's no more capacity for parking spaces? And they're building it larger because their community is growing, which is fine, but there's no more parking. There's nowhere else to put parking.
So just because it's reviewed administratively by staff doesn't mean that the rules don't apply. So the same rules still apply. They would have to still meet all the minimum requirements. So if there's anything related to requiring increased parking, they still have to do it. We do a lot of admin reviews all the time. So the rules still apply whether it comes here or not. So that will definitely be looked at.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Probably just for the applicant for, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I have one quick question on the diagram again. So we have the widths of the different drive lanes, but I don't see one for the, at the top of the diagram for the drive lane on the west side of the, do we know what that width is?
Are you talking about up at the north by the Mannerly Gate? Or
Just the drive lane along that whole parking row there.
be a U-turn, right? That's the only way you can't get out that way.
Well, it's a two-way drive lane, and I'm just wondering how the width compares to the other two-way drive lanes that are,
I think they have your answer for you.
Commissioner Woody, it's 25 feet.
okay,
Yeah,
that's all I
our
wanted.
standard for a two-way.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Ms. Capilla, I know I have a lot of speaker cards. Do you have any additional cards?
I do not, Chair.
Okay, so I think we're going to start with the applicant. Public hearing is now open. If you wish to speak, I will, and you haven't given a card, please take your card to Ms. Capilla. We're going to start with the applicant. I have a lot of cards. I know that not everyone intends to speak, so if you would like to come up as the applicant, please do so. State your name. I know we have questions for you.
Good evening. My name is Asad Basarabi. I'm the treasurer of Sajjadiya Islamic Society, and I'm here to answer all the questions that you might have today. So is this going to be a question-answer session, or should I?
If you have a presentation or you want to say something, absolutely, I want you to feel like you can do that. But I know there's questions also, so it's probably going to be a little bit of both.
Okay, I'll just give you a quick summary of what we are trying to do here, where we are coming from, what's the game plan, and I think we can answer pretty much all the questions that have been raised. The question about parking and how the cars go into the driveway, I think might need some discussion. From a perspective of this CUP, we are trying to move into this religious facility. We are trying to create this mosque in the city of Corona. It is for a specific Muslim denomination. So just like any other religion that have multiple denominations, multiple school of thoughts, this is the Shia mosque, Shia Muslim denomination, which basically technically is about 10% of the entire world Muslim population. So it's much smaller than actually the Santa Ana Way mosque that we have, which is about 90% of the Muslim population. So just by design, this congregation is not going to we'd like to grow. And as you said, in 5-10 years, we would like to make it 500 people, but just by design, I don't see it growing more than 175 people. That's how it's going to be. People are going to come. They're going to raise their kids. They like the city of Corona. The school districts are really good. I have family living here. And eventually they'll move out. New people are going to move in. So from that perspective, as far as the congregation size is concerned, I don't anticipate anything growing more than 170, 175, or going back to the commission and saying, we want to build a new building that can house 500 people. Currently, we are actually, for the last 4 years, we have been operating out of a city-owned suite in the Corona Mall, which we probably have to vacate in the next few months to make room for the Corona downtown revitalization process. So this is a building that we had purchased in anticipation to make this into a permanent home. In the last 4 years that we've been there, we have had the same congregation, 50 people, for Friday prayers. As far as the daily prayers, I think we talked about this. There are 5 daily prayers, and they are at different times. However, none of them are obligatory that I actually have to go to the mosque and pray. Therefore, hence the number, during those 5 specific times, I really don't anticipate it to be more than 5, maybe 10. Chances are between 0 and 5, so it will be very low. Also, going back to the discussion about the driveway getting backed up, so we, in our discussions with the planning team, we had said that we are going to make sure that the gates are always open during business hours. And I understand your concern, Commissioner, about, it's a sharp left curve, and it would slow down the entryway. However, the gates will be open, and we will have people who are going to make sure that the traffic is guided to the other side so it doesn't back up on Main Street. In addition to the 5 prayer timings, which I've said, it's usually 0 to 5 people, so very low. Also, I actually had a prepared statement, but I'm trying to address all the questions as I'm thinking about it. About your question about speakers outside. So we are not planning to have any speakers outside. There will be call of prayers, but that will be within the building. Culturally, historically, religion, this organized religion came about 1,400 years ago. You were somewhere in the middle of a desert, and you had to call for prayer. But that is not necessarily needed at this point. Everyone knows. They can go on Google Maps. They know these are the 5 times for call for prayer. This is where we're going to come if we want to go to the mosque and pray at the mosque. Otherwise, we can pray in our homes, in our offices. Many of the people in this congregation, while they live in this area, work in different counties. I work in downtown Los Angeles. The odds of me actually coming over there to pray will realistically be 1 to 2 times a week, if that is possible, if I decide to work from home. So net of all of this is that, we have been working with the City of Corona Fire Department, the planning team, the traffic division, and, these were all things that we took into account. Our neighbors who are behind us to make sure that, noise levels are low. Therefore, definitely no speakers outside, nothing like that. Everything is going to be contained. We know that we are asking for a conditional use permit in a location that is surrounded by private homes. So it is our responsibility to make sure that we take care of our neighbors and their concerns are addressed as well. So with that said, any other questions that you might have?
Commissioners, any questions?
I don't know if you want to go through the cards or while you're already standing here. I appreciate your explanation. Thank you. Whether it's your Shia or whether it's the other, the majority type of mosque attendees, congregation, they're all growing, right? Everyone's growing. So my question for you, and as far as the homes, I don't have a problem with it. Those homes on that street, they're already next to a church with much larger than yours, a larger parking lot. So it's nothing new to them, at least for on that one street. To whatever degree the church operations are, I'm not sure. But it's a much larger congregation than the building you're going from. Here's my concern is the same. It's the minimum queuing without an alternate flow of traffic that will draw away from Main Street. Because you only have the one entrance, the only one way to come down Main Street. And that's not your fault. It's got a center median. I get that. I like right in, right out. So anyway, no questions, but thank you for your explanations.
Okay, so thank you very much. I mean, with that, as a closing argument, I would requestfully request, if possible, to approve the planning team's conditional use permit, application for our Sajjad Islamic Society. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess I would like to ask a
Yes, yeah.
question of you. I mean, are you willing to make changes to the design of the parking and the flow of traffic on the site?
No, this design initially, came into place after working with the city traffic team, city planners, and everyone else. And with their guidance, we made this plan work for us. Our architect is over here, and he can answer that questions. If it's doable, I think we can do it. Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, if
Yeah.
we need to speak with him too.
Yes.
But because I think if Commissioner Alexander and myself both are very concerned about the flow and would like to explore a better some other options if possible.
And I think it comes down to safety for me. You've got cars barreling down on Main Street, major thoroughway. They're coming down from Ontario southbound, and then they're approaching this Magnolia intersection, and then you're having this lane, one of the lanes that are backlogged, waiting to come into the property. So I would really look forward to your architect's discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
If I can ask the applicant, how does it work with respect to operation? Do you have somebody that is there at all times to let people in, or do your attendees have access into the building? How does access to the building work? Because it's not open all the time. So how will people get in? Do you have someone stationed there the whole time, or how does that work?
No, there is no one stationed there. The attendees actually will have a card or something to actually have access to the building. Also, what happens is, on days when there's a larger congregation accepted, you actually have volunteers who will go there a couple hours ahead of time, open up the building, make sure the HVAC system is up and running, everything is good to go. They have drinks available, everything else, for folks to have food if they need to have it and stuff like that. So, you have people who will go in a few hours before the program starts. That's what we do in Corona Mall. I mean, there is going to be an event at 7:15 today. It's the month of Ramadan. They're going to open the fast. So we probably have volunteers there who got there at 5 o'clock to open up the place and make sure it's ready for everyone.
Can I ask, how big is the space that you have at the Corona Mall?
It's
At
2,000.
2,500?
2,600 square foot, yeah. We have 2 suites totaling 2,600 square foot.
So it's great that you're able to transition over to 4,300 to take on a larger community as you're growing. I understand that. At where you are now, you have the capacity to have all those cars show up because the parking lot's so large and no one's over there.
And no one is there in the
No one's
evenings
there
or
but
the
you
weekends.
guys, so
Yeah,
you
I
have the
agree.
place to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll wait for the architect.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, any question? Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say thank you and call up the next person, so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If we could hear from Fernando and Maricelda Gomez, and then right behind them, Ramiro Gonzalez.
Gomez, and Fernando's my husband. I live on 165 Nanners Way, which is right in front of that emergency gate. And I run a daycare from my home. I'm a licensed provider, and I have it 24 hours a day, and I have a traffic flow myself, with my clients. So my worry is the overflow of traffic. Right now, we struggle with the high school kids, that they come in and they park and they at pickup time and drop off time, there's like so much congestion already. I'm worried this is gonna add a lot more congestion, and then we won't have anywhere to park ourselves. We have little permits that we're supposed to have on our cars, at certain times, but those times, they're not relevant to what we need now. They need to be adjusted. I don't know, we're just worried about the parking.
I think that I was also, because I drove your neighborhood, and I didn't go knock on doors this time, but I usually do. But once I read the staff report and I saw that the gate at Nanners is only emergency, it's a Knox box, so no one but public safety is going to get through there. So for someone to park in your neighborhood and to get access to the building, they have to go a long, long way. So I kind of discounted it, if not to be rude, but it wasn't a concern any longer because it's going to be locked all the time. And those gates, that's very common in the city, to have an emergency exit, another way for them to come in and come out, but that's very rare.
Yeah, we get the high school kids parking, illegally and doing all kinds of stuff, and there's a lot of flow. The kids, are walking around, and it's just walking around 2 houses to go to the mosque. It's not that, and when there's no more parking there and it's so congested, the next, they're gonna park in the neighborhood, and it's just gonna be so hectic.
Could I ask you about your permits? Your streets there are permitted.
Yeah, there's a sign that says to park between this and this time.
So the residents have the priority as far as parking
Yeah,
on the
and then we have
street.
to pay for the permits. It would be nice if we could get the permits, given to us since we live there.
Well, you know what it is? It's a matter of your neighbors coming together and agreeing. They all have to agree to it.
Okay.
And then, so you're getting a special condition. You're getting a priority parking for the reasons that you already outlined. So I don't know that any other permitted area is waived. They're all paying for that, especially around the schools. For example, Centennial's the same way. The residential's just south of the school. It's all permitted. Sorry, I took up your time. Sorry, Chair.
All right.
If you had any further comments to make, just go ahead.
I unlocked you. Yeah, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
I mean, it would be nice if they could change it, the time on the permit, and,
Well, isn't that a matter to work with traffic, or is it your department, Joanne? Or, I would probably call Traffic Division, call the PD, and I think it's option 5, and ask for the traffic
so when it
administrator.
gets congested and there's like too many cars, what, do we just call the police to have them come ticket? Or
Well, it's a permitted neighborhood, so they have a right to cite anyone who doesn't have a permit because the signs are making notification that your neighborhood is permitted only.
So it's not calling the police, it's calling the traffic division?
It's calling their parking, they'll figure out who they're going to call to respond.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ramiro Gonzalez?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Romero. I live on Nanners Way. Same thing, my neighbors. We are living right in front of the location where the emergency exit is going to be at. Thank you for addressing the fact that it's going to be locked at all times. My question would be, if there is overflow of traffic and there's a panic because the vehicles are not getting out quick enough, are they going to open that gate and start allowing vehicles to exit?
It's only opened by a Knox box. Police and fire have the keys.
Okay, so they're the only ones that have a key. And then my other question is, due to the parking, is there going to be lighting put into that parking lot where it's going to affect the residents in that area?
I think earlier it was addressed that the lighting has to have the hoods on them so they shine down.
Okay, they shine
Which is
down.
no different than the church right across next door.
Okay.
To the other Picasso Street.
Okay.
They also have hoods so that it doesn't become a visual pollutant for your homes.
Okay. I know the noise level is addressed. I know there's not going to be speakers out there. If there is activities, are we going to get notified about those activities?
What do you
So
mean?
we're
What
aware.
activities?
If the church's going to have an activity of 70, 80, 90 people, there's going to be loud noise, et cetera.
I don't think they're required, no other church is required to notify the area residents. I don't know why this would be an exception to
Okay.
that, but Joanne is, no.
No, okay. And another thing is, in case there is an overflow of parking in our neighborhood, I think you addressed it with calling the traffic division?
Absolutely. Call dispatch, and if it's after hours, call dispatch, and they'll get someone out there.
Yeah, my biggest thing is, as long as they are, keeping in mind the neighborhood, the peacefulness of the neighborhood at this point, we don't need all that flow of traffic into the neighborhood. That's my biggest thing.
Sounded like the gentleman who spoke. They're very aware of the neighborhood. They're part of the neighborhood. They want to be good neighbors. That would be on them to
Okay.
have that relationship with the neighbors.
All right, that was it for my part.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Next, Melissa Ariola. And then following Melissa will be Leon Matsuki. Go ahead.
We also live on Nanners Way, and what I was going to say is pretty much covered by other neighbors. The only thing we're concerned about is the noise and just the extra overflow if we get.
Is it okay if I speak? She seems like she's a little nervous.
Yeah, what was your name?
I'm Jesse
husband.
Ariola.
Jesse? Okay.
Ariola, I live at 2411 Niners Way. So now, if you go to the mosque that's on Santana Way, like around noon, 3 o'clock, it's you can't even get through that street. Okay, they park in that mosque, they park at the park, they park in a dirt lot. So what's that from stopping parking around my home 4 or 5 times a day? That's my main concern, Like, I know you're saying you have to walk around, but it's not a far walk to walk from our street to where that mosque is being proposed at. And it already seems like it has issues with the parking. So why not pick a better location further down south on Main and Chase? That location's big. There's already industrial, there's medical facilities right next door. It's nowhere really near a neighborhood. That's, when it's 4th of July, when there's events at the park, that street just turns into pandemonium, which I get it, it's a national holiday, but now we're talking daily, not once a year, twice a year, daily. So, so what happens when, I know it's all proposed, but if it does happen, which it is gonna happen, because it always does happen, what is there to be done then? You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. We're trying to be neighborly, but, if you drive down that Santana Way in the afternoon, you can't even get through that. It just, people are walking across the street, they stop in the middle of the street. You're there waiting for them to get by, so obviously you don't run nobody over, which I get it, but, now this is in the neighborhood, so that's my only concern. And everybody else spoke, so basically it's the same thing. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you so much. Next to speak, Leon Matsuki.
My name's Leon Matsuki. I live on 2488 Picasso Circle. Pretty new resident, but I've never lived near a mosque before. And I had a couple of questions regarding concerns about like the noise level, just because I haven't lived near one before and I'm worried. So sorry if I'm misinformed, but I heard that there's no speakers being used at the mosque, but does that also include a non-use of loudspeakers? And are doors always going to be closed all the time, or are they going to be open during like events in relation to the noise concern? And I imagine you might need the applicant to answer some of these. So another question I had was, at the current location at the mall, what's the most people that you have at that place at one time, just for reference to see like how loud it gets or how quiet it is, or just to get a feel for the current condition for my reference.
In the staff report, it was reported to us 50 to 75 people.
50 to 75. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I just had those initial two questions, loudspeakers and then just the open doors or not. And that's all the questions I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next to speak, Jose Sanchez, followed by the architect, Wasim.
Well, I'm a homeowner. I live about 2 blocks away from the proposed site. And, my main concern is the traffic. Route of Montoya, it's very trafficy nowadays. I mean, we have the high school there, and, my wife got into a car accident right in Montoya and Main due to traffic. I mean, she got T-boned, basically. So, it's a concern with the traffic, and that's my main concern, really. Obviously, I don't live right next to the proposed site, but, it's a residential area, and mostly we would like to have not so much traffic. And I think we have a lot going on Main as it is right now. So that was I just wanted to voice my concern as far as that goes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Wasim Rashid. I am the architect for the project. And I was going through your comments as well while you were addressing it. I heard other people as well. I mean, just to clarify that it's not a very big community. It's the 10% of the major Islamic sect. So this is fairly a very small community, and all the traffic would be contained within the building. And as said before, they would make sure, and plus, as far as the noise is concerned, they'll have audio system within the building. There'll be nothing external on it. And as far as the traffic concern, I had, extensive meetings with the fire department, and the best possible route we could give has been planned with discussion after a lot of discussions with the fire department, and then with the blessings of the city planning department, we came up with this. Only one thing we could do is, when we enter, we can go also straight. That would take care of possibly any congestion while we make a turn. We can go one way straight to the west side of the property and make a turn, and that would take care of the congestion within the project.
I think I might need that articulated again.
So you're saying,
Sorry.
Commissioner Woody and I were thinking that it makes sense to have the straight
we can, but
the left turn option.
It will be just one way. It will be only entering, and exit would be still on the same exit we had already proposed.
When you heard the slope
that we'll take, I mean, we'll have to take care of it. We have to have a ramp there to connect it.
Mr. Rashid, I'm going to have them put that
Site plan.
site plan back up if that's okay.
It sounds, I'd like to say, it sounds like this was a part of your original proposal to the staff.
We were thinking of it, but then there was a lot of discussions with the fire department, and they wanted ensure that their fire truck can go uninterrupted. So, and again, this is the existing house. We cannot move it. So whatever we came up, what you see right now is the best possible we can do within the limits without, I mean, we couldn't move the existing house. So so this is the best possible solution we have given you. So if you see when you're entering from the east of the property from Main, you can go straight and then turn left. That could be arranged. That could be designed. But I would suggest if you can put that in the conditions of approval, we'll take care of it.
Okay, so just so staff has clarification, staff mentioned there was a grade differential
Yeah, there's a grade
Okay.
difference. It has to be done. It has to be regraded.
Okay, so, and given that the entrance off of Main Street there is only one way, is there a way to design it that if you go straight, we're only going to be allowing cars to turn left? We certainly don't want cars coming in on that west side and then going east, trying to get out on that driveway on Main Street. We want to keep everybody using the exit on the south side.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be signage, and there, as I said, when they have a larger gathering, they have volunteers who will be directing the traffic. And the gate has been, I mean, off hours, only the gate they can exit would be the exit gate. There's no other way they can exit.
So I guess I have a question, maybe more for staff than about the driveways, because I think it's great. I love hearing that we can have the the straight entrance drive connect to the west of the property to the parking over there. I think that's a big help. I also think though if we could have the south driveway also be an entrance, so that would be both entrance and exit.
You won't be able to
know-
do that, though, because of the median is a raised median.
No, I mean, it would still be right turn only on the exit, but people could also enter, so they would have two driveways they could enter the mosque parking lot at instead of all the cars coming in the one driveway. So some could go to the south side of the property and enter there. Others could enter on the north side of the property. That's what I'm saying. So for a two-way driveway, how much wider does that have to be?
Minimum 25 feet, and I think it'll impact the parking count.
Well, right. I mean, you'd probably lose the one spot on the far, of the far south of the angled parking.
Yeah.
But we are overparked by one spot too, according to the staff report. So I'm just wondering is that possible to make that a two-way and both an in and an out? I mean, that's my question for staff.
Maria, Chris, I don't know, is that driveway apron from Main Street wide enough to accommodate a commercial standard?
I mean, or it could be, widened, the driveway.
The southern neat driveway, that currently is designed at 20-foot wide, and it needs to be a minimum 24-foot wide in order for it to accommodate two-way traffic.
So
In and out.
it would need to be widened a bit,
It'd be
but it
widened.
could be done.
Actually, it'll be difficult if you need to stack cars. I think it won't have the width of 3 cars. I mean, we have to really go back to the drafting board and look into it, because I think it'll create, because it's next to the entrance to the church. With this landscape of this on the South of the property, you see that landscape, that's a church property. So, I mean, we'll be restricted in many ways.
Well, I would be reluctant to lose the parking spot. I personally don't think you have enough parking. I think from your description in your applicant's letter and the write-up from the staff report, a growing community, I don't believe 68 will hold you. Is the slow enough growth that you project? If there's even a 10% growth rate, and it's the way that the letter was written up with the statistics and the percentage of the age of the drivers, those who are 12 to 17 are going to be permitted and will be driving, so that's more cars, more potential drivers means more potential cars. And I'm not sure that the parking would fit. I agree with the gentleman. I've been over to the Santana, and they do have permission to park over on the park. They know that I went and spoke to two of the gentlemen over there, just at random, and they're definitely over capacity. They're growing at a rate they can't keep up with. They have 250 parking spots, and they're on side streets. You don't have the capacity unless you have an agreement with the church next door to utilize their parking. I would be against losing any parking spots.
That's exactly I'm thinking, because by losing that parking, and it won't help us, but just connecting it straight to the west of the property might ease the things. And as far as the Santana Mosque is concerned, again, those are the mainstream Muslim sect. They're about 90% of the Muslim population, so this is a very small community.
I understand that, but for them, I don't know that for you, even for your 10%, I don't know that, in the report it talks about, that's why you're moving out of the 2,500 square foot, right? You're moving to 4,300 for a reason. And then projecting out, when you outgrow this site, I think it'll be sooner than you think, as you have 12 and 17-year-olds. For driving, which means more cars.
But if you look at their percentage, it's very small. Mostly you'll find senior adults.
I appreciate the explanation, I really do. And if this was off the beaten path, I probably wouldn't be as concerned. But Main Street is very busy. Magnolia is very busy. Yeah, I still have concerns.
And I think the fact that it is on Main Street is why I feel pretty strongly that having two entrances, that the south one be two-way, both enter and exit.
Yeah, but you'd lose that parking spot, and I'm not sure.
Do you have any additional questions for him?
No.
Thank you.
So much. I have additional speaker cards from additional applicants, and I want to be respectful if you have something that you want to add. So I'm going to say your names or do my absolute very best to do that. Hasnain Kaku? Please correct me if I didn't do a good job. Followed by Tahara Kaku. Okay, perfect. So it'll be followed by Saeed Raza Rizu. Okay, how'd I do?
On
Okay.
the names. One of these days, we'll get to know each other. My name is Hasnain Kaku. I've been in this country for 50 years. And in that time frame, we have developed approximately 12 mosques all over Southern California. And our community is definitely a growing community. And we are so thankful to the city of Corona for considering us in this location. There are all these folks here ready to talk, but we've decided that with your insight and your understanding, we don't need to all come up here. So I'll be the last speaker to speak on behalf of the community. Then I'll let my partner conclude it. But to say a couple of things, and that is, we thank you for considering us. You're gonna have some amazing neighbors here, And to all of our neighbors that are going to be sitting there, please feel free to come to us, talk to us. If you have any questions, you'll have an 800, not 800, but you'll have a local number to call us. You don't have to call parking. Call us, and we will scare everybody off your streets, okay? So just be assured that we are here as good neighbors. There's no partying, there's no drinking, there's no music. None of that stuff happens at our church, at our mosque. And so this is going to be another symbiotic relationship that you will find to be very, very peaceful. We're looking forward to working with the church, looking forward to working with the citizens here, and to grow each other and understand each other. With that, I invite the leader of our community to speak up. Is that okay? Thank you.
In conclusion, I think it was a very good discussion. Are there any further questions at this point?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you have an overflow parking plan?
Our overflow part, we have been meaning to, because we've owned this property for a few years now, and we've been meaning to go and talk to our neighbors next door, our church. That has always been part of our plan, but we didn't want to go and start having a dialogue with them while this conditional use permit process was still in place. So our plan was the moment it would get approved, the first thing we would do is invite them for dinner or something so we can actually have a good chat. Because, I mean, our neighbors next door, the church, it's huge, but I hardly ever see any congregation over there. And they have a huge parking lot. So maybe they'll be able to work with us. And that was the plan. It's from a safety perspective, actually, it's going to be really safe also for them and for all the neighbors behind us, because one of the things we have noticed, properties that are on a main thoroughfare, especially like a street like Main Street, they're more open to vandalism, folks who want to squat over there for a few days here and there. Our property has been broken into probably 6-7 times in the last 3 years, this subject property, because it's on the main street, it has easy access. If we are going to be there, and based on the program, we're not going to be that many people going in and out, but there'll be constantly someone going in and out, which means it actually makes, I believe, the community, everyone else, it makes it safer. There'll be cameras on the property, there'll be everything there. So the fact that we will actually be going in and out of the property on a regular basis, it makes, I believe, the entire community a safer place.
I want to thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up. I also drove the church and went online and tried to call the office. And when you look at their website, their subcommittees and their times of Bible study, it's minimal, and it's actually compared to the size, maybe it's a decreasing community where maybe at one point it was thriving, I'm not sure, but it's not used very much. So that was my first thought is I would be comfortable if you were to come up with an agreement, a letter between you and them saying, these are our times, this is our peak times, and I just don't think that their Bible study times conflicted with your peak times. So I think that would be, I'd feel much more comfortable if you had that plan B established and set up. I would feel like I'd like to see what the architect would look like with that grade and going to the back, signage. I would feel comfortable with condition of approval of no audible outside your speakers. As far as that goes, I'm not comfortable with having a two-way exit and entrance on the south side, only because that would lose a parking spot. And I believe you'll need in your 10 days of your holiday, your special events, you may get more coming from outside as your community grows. So those are my thoughts, and I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I maybe would like to continue it until we can have that MOU with the church, look at what the architecture for the drive straight with signage, and look for the I think that was all I had.
If I could ask a question here. So the peak times that you are expecting, I assume are the peak times at your current location, which would be what, Friday evening, afternoon?
Friday afternoon, currently, it's about 40 to 50 people. It's between, depending on, again, daylight savings time or not, but let's make it between 12 o'clock to 2:30 in the afternoon. People will come in and leave the premises during that time on Friday. Most of our events are otherwise in the evening, which are usually around 8 o'clock in the evening. So.
And what type of events are those?
They're again speeches, basically. I mean, general speeches. A speaker is going to come in, they're going to speak. And you're more than welcome to join us on a Thursday at Corona Mall. Sometimes it's an English speaker. Sometimes there are speakers in different languages. So just general speech.
And then you said that would be one of your peak times. And then, did I read correctly, Sunday is also a time you expect to be a peak?
Eventually, if we decide to go towards a plan of maybe having a Sunday school, yes. Right now, there is nothing going on Sunday.
So at your current location?
There's nothing going on Sunday, unless there's a special event. Someone might decide to actually have a prayer service, so they'll come to us and say, you know what, can we have a prayer service? We'll have 30, 40 people. We're like, okay, fine.
But even on Sunday, the parking lot next door is not full at all.
No,
at
I mean,
STA.
it's my understanding that the Adventists have their main worship services on Saturdays. So it seems like that would be a good potential overflow arrangement if they were to do that. Okay, I have no more questions for the applicant.
As I
Thank
mentioned,
you.
this has been on my plan from day one to go and approach that church, but I didn't want to approach them 3 years ago and then forgetting about us. So that's going to be the first thing. Starting tomorrow morning, I'll work on it.
I know that Commissioner Vernon had a question as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did have a question. The majority of your congregation, would you say that there are seniors? There are there is the possibility for you to have your own transit, service where you're picking up some of the local residents so that reduces the number of parking?
If it grows to that point, I believe it can be done. Most of the folks, I would say, who would be considered seniors would be like me, somewhat around, so I would say about 60 to 70 percentile are probably going to be my age group. One more thing, I do remember speaker. So loudspeakers, there will be no loudspeakers outside the building. Of course, inside the building, it'll be speakers just like this, but nothing will be there outside the building.
Intercoms inside. Is it
There's no-
intercoms inside?
There is no need for intercoms inside. Yeah.
I thought there was a call to prayer would be announced.
Yeah, so is this considered intercom, what I'm speaking on right now? Yeah, so it would be just intercom, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was one other question that a resident had, and just so that they have that answer,
Yes.
was, are the doors closed during prayers?
The doors are closed during
Okay.
prayers. Yes, the doors are closed.
While I
during-
had you, I thought I would just ask that question.
I mean, even from a security standpoint, we would like to, in the last 4 or 5 years, places of worship and, their safety has been a huge concern. It's been on the news all the time and, we actually even approached Cal OES and, we have been in talks with them and they're ready to make sure that, this place of worship is safe just like, they want every other place of worship to be safe. So just from a safety standpoint, it makes sense to actually have the doors closed.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay.
If I can, Chair, I want to make a couple of clarifying comments that came up from the public because they don't know this. First and foremost, our municipal code does have a citing criteria when it comes to religious institutions. And it clearly says you cannot have any type of access off of a local street or even a street where there is going to be houses fronting on that property. So most of it, that's why you see all our churches that are on collectors or arterials where you don't have houses that actually interface with the church. That is the same situation here. So with respect to Nanners Way, their patrons cannot park on Nanners Way, so that is not allowed. They have to take all of their access off of Main Street. Nanners is not an option. option, not even for parking. So we can always add a condition, given that it's such a small congregation, that they remind their patrons that they are not to use Nanners Way for any kind of overflow parking. So I just want to make that absolutely clear that they do meet our citing criteria, which is why all of our churches are along major arterials. Second of all, with respect to noise, we have many congregations that use an audio system like this because you have such a large audience and it's all contained inside the building. This will be no different than that. What you see happen at Crossroads, you never hear anything outside the building. You're not going to hear anything here. The same with the current Islamic Society. So I want to make that very clear as possible. With respect to the Islamic Society of Corona Norco, that is a much larger congregation. It is the first mosque in the city of Corona. It is a place where these patrons go because they do not have other facilities. They are currently trying to build a second facility to dissipate that population and get more organizations out there, so not everybody is convening all on that same space. They recognized early on that they had a parking problem. They came to the city and they got the agreement with the city to park at Santana Park. In this situation, this applicant is meeting the letter of the law with respect to the assembly and the parking. So I just want to caution you on that. We cannot tie them to come up with parking off-site when they meet the letter of the law that they are able to meet the parking on-site, which they are. They can have that discussion, but I want us to be very cautious about that. They are parking it at their assembly ratio. I think if their need comes that they need the parking, I think that's a discussion that they are going to have. What I'm hearing now, that is not necessarily the case right now, but it may be the case a couple of years down the road. So I need this commission to think of that, because I certainly don't want us to be putting in a situation where they are tied to somebody else's property to make this project work, when we're telling you that it is working based on what they're proposing tonight. With respect to the access, it is a fixed location. There's nothing you can do. The building is right there. You have to come in and you have to make the left. There's no other way to do it. I think it's a good compromise that they're willing to allow us to go straight and have a left in so we can circulate that out. And I think what the architect was trying to explain on the south driveway was that when you redesign the driveway opening, the flares change. And because the flare on the south end would affect the church site, they would have to go on their property and redesign that apron. You just can't push it all to the north. So I think he was talking from a design perspective. That's where it was getting complicated in terms of the flare on the right-of-way. So I just wanted to make those points.
I appreciate that.
I think that was really helpful.
I think that was really helpful, and we have tied you into someone else's property, and that's unfair. I do believe that you've more than met the requirements according to staff that I would approve it. I would go for it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. The public hearing is now closed, so you can absolutely take your seat.
Okay, I guess Commissioner Vernon, Alexander, Commissioner Longville, and Ms. Coletta. Thank you so much for your time. I wasn't honestly expecting this to go on for that long, and you guys are here at 7:30 at night, so appreciate that. Have a good day.
So any questions, comments?
Yeah, so my comment, like I said, I really I am happy that we can change that drive lane on the north of the building to take traffic to the west, parking. I think that will help. I still do feel that the south driveway would be a big improvement to be both in and out, so that 40, 50, 60 cars don't all have to use one entrance to the lot. Even if it does lose one spot, I'm not concerned about that, because the current size of the congregation, 50 to 75 people, are showing up at the peak times, and so at least some of those are multiple people per vehicle. Maybe quite a few of them are multiple attendees per vehicle. So. That's why I suggested it. I would be comfortable with the 67 spots and not just the 68. And if the facility, if the congregation were to grow over the next few years, and they do need more parking, they do for overflow parking, strike an agreement with the the church next door, that would be great. But, I'm comfortable with, the amount of parking that is in the plan, and even one less for, if that could accommodate, the flare on that driveway moving to the north to where, onto the site that is owned by the applicant, to make that so that there are, half the cars can enter in one driveway, half can enter in the other, and make it less likely that cars are backing up on Main Street. So that's where I'm at with that.
So that driveway would be a future condition, though? That would not be for this project? That would be if they needed additional?
No, I'm saying for this project, for the 67 or 68 spots we have now, I still feel that, forcing 60 cars, 68 cars to use only the north driveway and is, when everybody's trying to arrive for prayers at the same time or then that's potentially going to, cause the backup. And if we had two driveways where half could use one and half could use the other, I think that's a better situation for the traffic on Main Street. I think Commissioner Alexander disagrees with me, but that's fine. That's my point, and she has her point of view.
I think the struggle that I'm having is that it was explained that making that a two-way drive encroaches on the neighbor, and that's the struggle.
I don't think it does, though. I think you can extend the flare of the driveway to the north and not affect the neighbor to the south, just from looking at, aerial photos of the layout.
And I appreciate that perspective. However, I'd like to stick to the 68. I'm okay with that. I think my main concerns have been addressed, that they're, like every other business on Main Street from Citron to Ontario, have options to draw traffic away from Main Street. And with the drive going straight out or turning left, that'll alleviate my concerns. I'm thinking of the churches that I'm familiar with, and there's more than one way to get in, but there are single lanes. So I'm okay with just leaving it. If they could work with staff to get the drive going straight through, and with signage of one way, and with condition of approval of no loudspeakers. We can't condition with the church, but it seems like they're open to having that discussion on their own down the road if it's needed. I guess my question would be, Ms. Coletta, is what's the trigger, what's the mechanism, what's the threshold for 68 spaces not being enough 5 years from now, 8 years, 10 years from now? What's the trigger options for the condition of approval?
Well, I think it's going to be up to the congregation to really decide that, because based on their location, unlike the Islamic Society, there are options as to where they can park off-site.
Right.
You don't have options on Main Street. I mean, it's either they're not going to be able to attend. If they find someplace, they're probably going to be walking quite a distance. I would recommend that we make sure we have the condition that they notify their attendees that there's no parking on Nanners Way. And I think they can manage that given how small they are. But I think it's going to be an issue of you may have people show up and may not be able to park and cannot be there for prayer that time. They are going to have to be the ones to be the driver of that.
Okay, so as far as the CUP, CUPs are, it's conditional as far as compliance. So they could be brought to task if they are somehow overflowing or whatever that looks like. They could be brought forward for administration consulting.
Oh, absolutely. If we're notified of anything or something doesn't look right, we will definitely make contact with them and look at that.
But there would be no trigger because the guideline is based on the meeting space.
That's
So
correct.
unless they just wanted to add more meeting space, or more prayer space, then there would be nothing to trigger that.
That's correct. And you have to remember, their prayer times, because they have so many options, 5 options throughout the day, it's just done differently than what you normally see like on evenings. And then, for example, Crossroads has 5 services on Sunday. I mean, it's a huge facility, and they too park on the street because they cannot park everybody. But it works, it's a limited time. So I think here, because it's spread out, they give their people the option of when they probably want to go. And there's people that probably have a habit of going at a certain time, and others have a habit of going at a different time.
And I don't think it's the regular schedule that my concerns are. My concerns are the special occasions. And for other churches, they all deal with this overflow of attendees. But this spot being so unique, there is no possible overflow on side streets, especially with those being permitted, and if they're being advised to promote that, hey, these streets are permitted only, and your vehicle is subject to citation, whatever that looks like.
I think if they have a special event that draws a large crowd, it's going to force them to go to their neighbor and say, can they possibly use that parking on that specific day?
And I'm okay with that. That's their only option, and it's available, and it's a smaller activity church, so it's a good thing. I have no other comments. Chair.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, I motion that the Planning and Housing Commission find the project categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15301, and adopt the resolution number 2661 granting CUP 2023-0015 based on the findings contained in the staff report and conditions of approval.
With the
Were you
3
wanting
additional conditions?
And could we repeat those, please?
Yeah, the 3 additional conditions that I have, if you don't mind, are patrons must be notified that they cannot park on Nanners Way.
Or any of the streets,
Okay?
not just Nanners.
Any residential street? Okay. Work with staff to redesign the entrance to go straight and connect with the rear parking, and no exterior speakers.
Yes, you can add those.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion was made by Commissioner Vernon and seconded by Commissioner Alexander. Motion's passed. Written communications. Has Planning and Housing Commission Secretary received any written communications from persons providing information or seeking action by the Planning and Housing Commission?
No, Chair.
Report from Mrs. Coletta, anything?
No reports?
Do any members of the Planning Commission have any matters to discuss? Okay. There's future agenda items are to be determined, and the next meeting of the Planning and Housing Commission is March 24th, 2025. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.